What if the man everyone mocked for fixing cars held the keys to $1 billion empire? And what if the woman they laughed at because she wore secondhand shoes and married a mechanic was actually the only one who ever saw the truth? This is not just a love story. It's a story of masks, betrayal, loyalty, and the kind of strength money can never buy. By the time you finish watching, you won't just ask, how did they not see it coming? You'll ask yourself, would I have stood by him or walked away like the rest? The church was small, nothing like the marble cathedrals Isla used to dream of as a child. The wooden pews were uneven, the floor creaked with every step, and the bouquet she held was made of wildflowers she picked herself that morning. But her hands didn't shake, and her smile didn't falter. She was marrying Leo, her Leo. The man with oil under his nails and calluses on his palms, who once fixed her scooter for free when her salary barely covered rent. A man who never raised his voice but somehow always made her feel heard. A man everyone said she was too good for, when really she knew he was the only one who had ever seen her. Not just her face, her shape, or her sob story, but her soul. Her dress had no brand, no trail, no shimmer, but Leo looked at her like she was royalty, and that was all she needed. Still, from the corner of her eye, she saw the sideways glances. Her aunt whispered behind a lace fan. Her cousin rolled his eyes. She could have married the banker's son, someone muttered. Now she'll be washing mechanic grease off her floor forever. Isla had learned to pretend she didn't hear. She held Leo's hand tighter. They exchanged simple vows. No extravagant speeches, no choreographed dance, just quiet, trembling promises between two people too used to being told they'd never matter. When the pastor said, "You may kiss the bride," Leo hesitated like she were something precious. Then he kissed her forehead instead of her lips. Gentle, reverent. And that made the whispers louder. At the reception, held in a rented backyard tent, the air was filled with laughter. But not all of it was kind. Her mother didn't come. Her sister sent a text. "Hope it's worth it. You just buried your future for a mechanic." Even the cake was store-bought and lopsided. Isla didn't care. Leo kept sneaking glances at her as if to make sure she was real. And when they danced alone beneath the cheap fairy lights, his voice cracked as he whispered, "I still can't believe you said yes." That night, they walked back to their apartment because the old truck had broken down. Her heels blistered her feet, but she didn't complain. He carried her halfway, laughing through the tiredness. "Sorry," he said. "I wanted to give you more." She cupped his face and kissed him. "You gave me everything that matters." And for that one moment, beneath the broken street lamp and the sound of dogs barking in the distance, the world went quiet. It didn't matter what the others said. It didn't matter how small their wedding was, or how many scoffed at her choice. Because Isla had never felt richer. She didn't know then that one day they'd all beg for a seat at her table. She didn't know she had just married one of the wealthiest men in the country. And she didn't know that the man who had oil on his fingers also held the keys to an empire. The apartment they shared was barely 400 square feet, tucked above an old laundromat that clanged late into the night. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, and the ceiling fan groaned with every turn. But Isla had never called a place home until now. Each morning, Leo rose before dawn, slipped out without a sound, and returned with his hands blackened from engine grease and his arms aching. He worked at Dawson's Auto Garage, a place that smelled of gasoline and rust and tired dreams. But when he walked through the door and saw Isla waiting with a plate of reheated leftovers and a smile, he looked like the richest man alive. Isla had taken a job at the local diner 3 blocks down. She served burgers to truckers and coffee to strangers who never remembered her name. But she didn't mind. It paid the bills, and it let her return home just in time to watch Leo rinse off the day's grime and curl beside her on their sagging couch, exhausted but happy. Still, the whispers didn't stop. At the diner, regulars would joke, "You're the bride who married the guy with a wrench instead of a wallet, right?" Her manager once pulled her aside and said, "You could do better. You're too pretty to be wasting yourself on someone like that." Isla never replied. She just tightened her ponytail and took the next order. But the words clung to her like the smell of grease on Leo's uniform. One afternoon, she brought him lunch at the garage. He was lying under a pickup truck, legs sticking out, humming to himself. When he rolled out and saw her, his face lit up like a boy's. "You brought sandwiches?" She smiled, held up the paper bag. "And orange soda." They sat on the curb, sun beating down on their backs. oil stains on the ground around them, and talked about nothing and everything. "Someday," Leo said between bites, "I'm going to build us something better. Maybe a little house with a garden. You can quit the diner. Paint if you want. I'll fix bikes in a shop of my own." Isla looked at him, sweat clinging to his brow, eyes full of quiet hope. "I don't need better," she said. "I just need you." He leaned in and kissed her, hands still smelling like steel and motor oil. But that night, when she returned home alone, she found her mother waiting outside their building, arms crossed and eyes full of disapproval. "So, this is it? This is your life now?" her mother asked, stepping over a puddle like the entire block was beneath her. Isla sighed. "What do you want, Mom?" "To remind you that you still have options. Marcus, the lawyer's son, is still single. You don't have to throw your life away for a man who scrubs engines and sleeps in shoebox apartments." Isla laughed quietly, pain bubbling beneath the sound. "I didn't throw my life away. I finally picked it up." Her mother sneered. "Love won't pay for your child's future, if you even plan to have one." She walked away before Isla could answer, but the words hung in the hallway long after the footsteps faded. That night, Leo wrapped his arms around her as they lay in the dark. He didn't ask what was wrong. He could feel it. He just held her tighter and whispered, "They don't have to understand. You do. That's enough." But deep inside, something began to stir in Isla. No doubt, but curiosity. Because love had never been a question. But Leo had secrets. Sometimes in the way he looked at old buildings with too much familiarity, or how he flinched when she asked about his childhood, or the one time she found a luxury watch hidden in the back of his sock drawer with a name engraved she didn't recognize. She trusted him. But now she began to wonder, was there more to her mechanic than even he was willing to admit? It was meant to be a simple dinner, just Isla's sister Mara, her brother-in-law James, and their over-perfumed mother stopping by for a quick check-in. Isla spent the whole afternoon scrubbing the apartment twice over, rearranging the same 3 cushions on their old sofa, and lighting 2 lavender candles to mask the smell of garage oil that always lingered after Leo came home. He arrived just in time, wiping his hands on a rag and changing into a fresh shirt that still held the scent of machine grease. "They won't like me, will they?" he asked, half smiling. "They don't have to," Isla replied, fixing his collar. "They just have to leave without making me cry." But Isla had underestimated how cruel family could be when cloaked in politeness. The moment her mother stepped in, she wrinkled her nose like someone had dragged her into a sewer. "Charming," she muttered, looking around. "Very minimalist." Mara followed with a smirk, her diamond necklace catching the light as she walked past the chipped bookshelf. "Is this the wedding photo?" she asked, picking up a small frame from the windowsill. "Didn't even bother with a real photographer?" Leo stayed quiet. He poured drinks, offered snacks, answered every question with calm civility, even when James asked, "So, what exactly do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Still fixing engines or moving up to tire rotations?" Isla clenched her fists beneath the table, trying to hold back her anger. "Leo runs most of the garage himself," she said sharply. "He's saved enough to maybe open his own shop soon." Her mother raised an eyebrow. How ambitious. But the worst moment came during dinner, when Mara looked around the cramped kitchen and said, "Do you ever miss the life you could have had, Isla? You were at the top of your class. You had offers. Now you're just here." Leo didn't say a word. He simply got up, took his empty plate, and walked to the sink. Isla stood, her voice cold. "I miss nothing, because I have someone who sees me, someone who treats me like I matter, not like a trophy to hang on a country club wall." Her mother clicked her tongue. Such passion, for a man who wears the same pair of shoes to every occasion. After they left, silence filled the apartment. Leo sat on the floor beside the couch, head leaning back, eyes closed. "I'm sorry," Isla whispered, crouching beside him. He shook his head. "Don't be. You chose me, and I'll spend my whole life making sure that choice wasn't foolish." She wrapped her arms around him. "It never was. But I just hate how they look at you, like they see nothing." Leo looked at her then, really looked. Let them. The world can stay blind. What matters is, I see you. You see me. The rest is noise. But that night, after Isla fell asleep, Leo walked to the corner of their closet and pulled out an old leather wallet. Inside, behind their marriage license and a faded photo of Isla holding a coffee mug, was a photograph he hadn't shown her. It was a steel building with tinted windows, towering over the city skyline. At the bottom, etched in glass, were 5 silver letters: Orion. He stared at it for a long time, then tucked it back, hidden beneath the quiet life he had built. He told himself the past didn't matter. But something about the cruelty of Isla's family that night rekindled an old fire, not for revenge, but for return. Because someday, when the truth came out, they wouldn't just regret how they treated him. They'd regret ever doubting her choice. It started with a storm, the kind that knocks out traffic lights and turns gutters into rivers, the kind that soaks you through before you've taken 3 steps outside. Isla had stayed late at the diner for inventory, and by the time she called Leo, the rain was relentless. "I'll come get you," he said. "I'll borrow the old truck." But when the headlights pulled up, it wasn't the truck. It was a sleek black sedan, an older model, but gleaming under the rain like it had just rolled out of a showroom. She climbed in, soaking wet. "Whose car is this?" "Friends," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Helping me out while the truck's down." "A generous friend," she muttered, running her hand over the stitched leather seats. Leo didn't answer. They drove in silence for a few minutes, until the rain became a wall too thick to see through. "We can't make it back," he said. "Too dangerous to drive on this road. There's a place nearby we can wait it out." 10 minutes later, they pulled into a gravel driveway that looked long forgotten, hidden behind overgrown hedges. At the end stood a house. Not a cottage, not a cabin, a house. Modern, tall, with wide glass windows and a wrap-around porch. It looked abandoned on the outside, but when Leo punched in a code and the door slid open, the lights flickered to life, revealing sleek floors, stainless steel appliances, and a fireplace already crackling. Isla stopped at the entrance. "Leo, what is this place?" "Just a place I used to come to. My friend left it to me for emergencies." She walked slowly through the living room, heart pounding. The furniture was minimal, but expensive. There was a piano in the corner, a library wall full of leather-bound books, and a faint scent of cedar and something else. Clean wealth. In the kitchen, Isla opened the fridge and found it fully stocked. She turned. "Your friend lives like a ghost with a stocked fridge?" Leo shrugged. "He has it managed remotely." "What's his name?" she asked. Leo didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, heading for the fireplace. "You're tired. You should change into something dry. There are clothes upstairs." The guest room closet was filled with men's clothing, all in Leo's size. Isla stared at the clothes, ran her fingers across the labels. Handmade, tailored, European. She found a folded blanket and sat on the edge of the bed, the thunder outside matching the chaos now stirring inside her. When she returned downstairs, Leo was asleep on the couch, one hand under his head, the other resting on his chest. A file lay on the coffee table, partially opened. She wasn't one to pry, but something compelled her. And when she flipped it open, she saw a document with the name Leonard Carter typed across the top, under a letterhead that read, "Orion Group Holdings Confidential." Her breath caught. She closed it gently, set it back, and stood still, the firelight flickering across her face. For a full minute, she just stared at the man, asleep on the couch, chest rising and falling like nothing had changed. But something had. Because Isla didn't know anyone named Leonard Carter. She only knew her husband, the mechanic. And yet, something inside her whispered that Leo wasn't just hiding a part of his past. He might be hiding who he truly is. The rain hadn't stopped by morning, but Leo was already dressed before the first light broke through the clouds. Isla stirred on the couch, pretending to sleep as she watched him move. Calm, calculated, as if he had done this 100 times. He thought she hadn't seen the file. He was wrong. She heard the front door close softly, and within seconds she was up, slipping on her jacket, ignoring the echo of doubt that pounded in her chest. She followed him in a cab, keeping a distance as he turned onto a road that led into the older part of the city, where tall buildings loomed, but silence reigned. He entered a gated parking lot, passed through security that didn't even blink at him, and disappeared into a towering glass building labeled nothing but a simple etched logo. Isla waited 20 minutes before stepping out, rain sliding down her neck, her shoes soaked. She found the back entrance marked for deliveries and pressed her ear to the door. Inside, voices echoed, muffled but clear. one of them, undeniably Leo's. Calm, measured, authoritative. "You've delayed this for too long, Carter," said the other man. "The board is getting nervous. Your brother's mismanagement nearly tanked the company." "I'm aware," Leo replied. "And I told you, I'll come back when I'm ready, not before. This isn't about you being ready. It's about legacy, about your name." "My name," Leo said quietly, "is now grease-stained and forgotten by choice. Don't try to resurrect it for convenience." Isla backed away slowly, heart racing. Her breath caught in her throat. Carter, the name from the file. Leonard Carter. Leo. He wasn't just someone connected to Orion Group. He was its missing piece. The man behind the curtain. The ghost CEO that the finance blog speculated about but could never prove. She stepped back into the rain, eyes wide, head spinning. She thought she might scream or cry or collapse, but she didn't. Instead, she walked away from the building, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if trying to hold her entire life from falling apart. When she returned home, Leo was already back. Shirt damp, hair wet, smile soft. "I brought takeout," he said. "I figured we needed comfort food." Isla nodded, lips pressed together, hands trembling as she took the bag. They sat in silence. Leo chatted like nothing had changed, but Isla didn't hear the words. All she heard was the one truth that wouldn't leave her mind. He lied, not once, not just by omission. He had built an entire life on pretending he was someone else, and she had married the lie. Later that night, she stood by the window as he slept. Her reflection stared back at her through the glass. Same Isla, same skin, same heart. But the world behind her, completely different. She had married a mechanic, but the man in her bed was a billionaire hiding from himself. Isla didn't confront him right away. She couldn't. The betrayal wasn't sharp like a knife. It was heavy like stone, sinking slowly into her chest, pressing against her ribs every time he kissed her cheek or brought her coffee or asked how her day went. So she waited, observed, collected pieces of a puzzle she never thought existed. While Leo worked late, she visited the library, scoured the internet on an old laptop, and asked discreet questions at the diner to a retired accountant who once worked for Orion Group. One night, when Leo was asleep, she crept into the closet and found the leather wallet again. This time, she dug deeper. Hidden behind a tucked photograph was a black key card and a folded letter addressed to someone named Eleanor Carter. The letter was written in Leo's handwriting, only it wasn't Leo's voice. It was cold, corporate, filled with phrases like liquidating assets and board restructuring. Isla read it 3 times before realizing Leo hadn't just left a company, he had walked away from a family war. The next day, she took a bus to the downtown district and stood across the street from Orion Group's headquarters. She didn't go in, just watched. Men in suits, women in heels. Security is tighter than in a government building. She imagined Leo here, before her, behind one of those glass walls, running it all in silence. A ghost CEO, as the headlines once said. The mechanic had built the machine, and then vanished. When she returned home, she opened his tool chest. Not for answers, but for comfort. But there, hidden beneath old wrenches and dusty bolts, she found something else. A notebook, bound in leather, filled with sketches. Designs for electric engines, blueprints. Notes dated 3 years ago, long before he met her. The bottom of one page had a name scribbled in pen. Project Lazarus. She stared at it, stunned. She remembered reading that name before, in a Forbes article about a secret R&D initiative rumored to be worth billions, but halted mysteriously when the lead engineer disappeared. That engineer was Leo. The final puzzle piece snapped into place. Leo hadn't just run from wealth. He had abandoned a kingdom he'd built with his own hands. Isla's breath hitched. He didn't leave because he failed. He left because something, or someone, broke him. That night, she didn't sleep. When Leo reached for her, she pulled away gently. "I'm just tired," she said. But her eyes stayed open, watching the ceiling, wondering what else he had buried. I wonder if he ever planned to tell her. And more than anything, wondering what would happen when the truth finally came to light. Not just his truth, but hers too. The silence between them had grown louder than words ever could. Isla moved around the apartment like a ghost, careful not to touch too much, say too much, Feel too much? Leo noticed. He always noticed. Are you okay? He asked one morning, his voice thick with concern. She nodded, but her eyes darted away. That night, she sat him down. The TV was off. The air was still. Who are you? She asked, and for a second, Leo looked like a man hit by lightning. I don't know what you mean. She dropped the notebook in front of him, opened to the page labeled Project Lazarus. Don't lie to me again. He stared at it, silent. The mask was off now. You weren't supposed to see that, he said quietly. Why? She asked, voice rising. Because I'm too stupid, too poor, too small for the truth? No, he snapped, because I was afraid I'd lose you if you knew who I used to be. Isla laughed, bitter and heartbroken. You mean who you still are? You've never stopped being that man. You just stopped sharing him with me. I didn't want this life to feel like an act, he said. I didn't want you to doubt what we have. But you lied, she said. Every day you lied. You let me serve coffee and get mocked for marrying a mechanic while you sat on an empire. Leo stood. Do you think it was easy? Living every day pretending I didn't want to fix the world I helped build? I left because that world nearly destroyed me. I left to find peace. And then I found you. So you made me your peace, she whispered, but you never gave me the truth. His shoulders sagged. I didn't know how. Isla grabbed her coat. Then I need to leave until you figure that out. She stayed with a friend for 2 days. During that time, Leo didn't call. He didn't text. But on the morning of the 3rd day, a black car pulled up outside her friend's building. A man stepped out, dressed in black, with a silver pin shaped like an O on his chest. Mrs. Carter, he said, your presence is requested at Orion headquarters. Mr. Leo Carter has just resigned, and he asked for you. Isla stared, stunned. Resigned from what? From being the CEO of Orion, the man said. He's giving it all away, to return to you. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a hallway lined with frosted glass, white marble, and silence so thick it pressed against Isla's chest like armor. The man in black led her forward, past boardrooms where powerful voices had once debated billions, past portraits of founding members, including one that stopped her in her tracks. Leonard Carter, young, unsmiling, regal in a suit. She stared at it, realizing she had only known one version of him, the version he chose to keep. He's inside, the man said, gesturing to the final door. She stepped in and found Leo standing by a large window, city lights glowing behind him like a sea of gold. He didn't turn around. You came, he said. You shouldn't have left like that, she whispered. You shouldn't have lied, he replied. So I ended it. He turned then, eyes tired but resolute. The board thinks I've lost my mind. I told them I'm giving up my shares, stepping down, vanishing from this world. I told them I only built this empire because I didn't think I was worthy of love. But now I know I am. Because you loved me before you knew my name. Isla walked to him, her hands trembling. I didn't want your money, Leo. I just wanted you to be honest. I would have stood beside you, even in that boardroom, if only you trusted me enough to let me in. I do now, he said. I just hope it's not too late. She looked around, at the sleek lines, the towering desk, the crown he was willingly casting aside. You're giving up everything. Not everything, he said. I'm keeping what matters. They stood in silence for a beat, until Isla reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded notebook page, Project Lazarus. This belongs to you, she said. It's your dream. No, Leo replied. It's our dream now, if you'll have it. Isla took his hand. Only if it's built on truth this time. Together, they walked out of the building, not as CEO and stranger, but as husband and wife reborn in the ashes of revelation. Outside, the world was still spinning, but for the first time, Leo didn't feel like he was running from it. He was walking towards something new, and Isla, holding his hand, knew that love, real love, sometimes demanded more than forgiveness. It demanded surrender, risk, and the courage to choose each other even after the masks had fallen. It began quietly, not with press releases or board meetings, but with a garage door lifting and sunlight spilling across the cracked cement floor of an old, forgotten workshop in the industrial quarter. Leo turned the lights on one by one, each flickering bulb illuminating dust, metal, and memory. Isla stood beside him in a hoodie and jeans, wiping her hands with an old rag, her eyes dancing with purpose. "It's not much," he said, "but it's ours." She looked around and smiled. "Then let's build something real." They started small, just the two of them. No suits, no investors, no headlines. Project Lazarus, once meant for $1 billion lab, was reborn on hand-sketched blueprints and trial and error experiments on salvaged car parts. But this time, it wasn't just an engineering dream. It was their resurrection. Word spread, not because of Leo Carter's name, most still didn't know it, but because of what they were doing. An ex-mechanic and his wife are building zero-emission engines out of scrap, offering repairs at low cost to struggling families, training ex-convicts and dropouts with second chances in their hands. One by one, the media caught on. The Grease billionaire, one article called him. The man who walked away from billions to build with bare hands. But Leo never gave interviews. Isla did. She stood in front of microphones in a torn denim jacket and said, "We're not here to prove anything. We're here because love isn't built on lies or legacy. It's built in the grit of every honest day." Back at their old apartment, the same neighbors who once mocked her now offered casseroles and awkward congratulations. Her mother visited once, briefly, then left in silence after seeing her daughter's face beaming on a TV screen beside phrases like innovation and integrity. One evening, a limousine pulled up outside the workshop. An older man stepped out in an Armani suit, flanked by assistants. It was Charles Vance, the man Leo once pushed out of the boardroom at Orion. "Carter," he said, "you had the world in your palm and traded it for oil-stained boots and second chances." Leo simply replied, "That's how I found peace." Vance chuckled. "And legacy?" Isla appeared at the door, grease on her cheek, and Leo smiled. "She's standing right here." The wedding wasn't grand. It wasn't broadcast or featured in magazines. It wasn't held in a cathedral or a luxury resort. It was in the garage, cleared out, string lights wrapped around tool shelves, engines pushed aside to make space for folding chairs, and a small wooden arch Leo had carved himself. Isla wore a simple white dress, soft and unassuming, the fabric catching the sunlight, as if it had borrowed its glow from her smile. Leo waited at the front in a black shirt, with sleeves rolled to the elbows, his hands trembling not from nerves, but reverence. When she walked down the aisle, barefoot, holding a bouquet made of wildflowers from behind the garage, every eye turned glassy, not from spectacle, but from truth. Among the crowd were the same people who once laughed at her behind her back. The old landlady, the neighbor who once called her naive, even the woman from the diner who used to scoff at Isla's dreams. Now they watched in silence, witnessing the story none of them could have predicted. The vows were handwritten. Leo took hers with both hands, reading every word like a prayer. "You gave me love when I had nothing. Now I have everything. But I only want it if you're in it with me." Isla's voice cracked as she spoke hers. "You could have chosen anyone, built anything, lived anywhere, but you chose this. You chose truth, and you chose me. So now I choose you forever." When the officiant said the final words and Leo kissed her, there was no applause, just silence. A sacred full silence, like the moment a storm finally breaks and the first light filters through. Afterward, they danced. There was no DJ, just a Bluetooth speaker and a playlist Isla made from songs they used to sing to each other when the world still called them poor. As the night deepened and the last guest left, Leo pulled her close beneath the string lights. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved yourself," she replied, resting her head on his chest. In the distance, the city skyline glowed. Orion Tower is still shining, though now under new leadership. Leo had walked away from it, not in shame, but in choice. He built something rarer than an empire. He built a legacy of love. And Isla, the girl once mocked for marrying a mechanic, now stood in the quiet center of a story, so impossible it could only be real. Because some stories aren't made of headlines or wealth. Some are forged in grease, grit, and a woman's unwavering heart. And when they write this one, they won't remember the empire he left. They'll remember the queen he found. They called her a fool. They mocked her for loving a man with oil-stained hands and a rusted truck. But what they didn't know was that those hands once built an empire. And what they forgot is that love, when it's real, doesn't care about last names, bank accounts, or bloodlines. He gave up a throne to earn her trust. She gave him faith when the world offered none. And in the end, They didn't just rebuild a life, they redefined what it means to win. Not with headlines, not with gold, but with a garage full of dreams, a vow no scandal could shake, and a woman they once laughed at, now walking hand in hand with the man they never truly knew. Because sometimes the greatest love stories begin in silence and end in standing ovations.